Pull up a chair and grab some popcorn, because in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how I got a job as an AWS Solutions Architect at AWS. If you're new here, I'm Greg Powell, 20+ year tech career veteran. I create videos on AWS, cloud, and tech. So I think it's important to set the stage. Let me take you back to 2015. Why it seems like it was almost yesterday. I was working at a consulting firm at the time. I had joined a project and we were working to potentially discuss with the client to shift their workload towards the cloud. They were in an existing data center. All of their infrastructure was like multiple years old. It was like 5+ years old, aging, falling apart, and end of support. And fast forward to the decision that the client made, they ultimately decided not to progress to the cloud at the time. And this project that was supposed to go into the cloud, which I was super excited about, and it turned out to be just another data center tech refresh. I was definitely disappointed in that, but I didn't let this event get me down. I decided to use that energy to press forward to figure out how I was going to get into a cloud job, because at this point, I was tired of data center stuff. I had already been doing data center integration projects for 14 to 15 years, and I already knew that the market was shifting towards cloud. The writing was all over the wall. So my next steps were to figure out, hey, how can I get out of here, and how can I live, eat, sleep, and breathe cloud all the time? So some of the early decisions I had to figure out was, do I want to work with a business that consumes the cloud technologies, such as a partner, for example, or just any business that uses cloud technologies to operate their business? Or do I actually want to work with the cloud vendor directly? And the answer was clear for me. I didn't want to take any more chances working with the business directly that said that they consume cloud services, because yeah, they may consume cloud services, but they also may have some hybrid stuff in a data center that I no longer wanted to mess with. So the choice was clear for me. I was going with a cloud vendor. And there was a few at the time, big players in the game: AWS, Microsoft, and Google. The choice was clear. Didn't have to think about it even for a nanosecond. AWS all the way. Even in 2015, for a number of years, I had been admiring AWS from afar. I remember watching the reInvent conferences on YouTube and watching all the solution architects go up on stage and explain as they set up there with their customers all the really amazing things that they had built in AWS in the cloud. And I was just always blown away and enamored at the possibility that that one day could be me. So I charted a course towards how can I land my dream job as an AWS solution architect, and that's what I did. Now, some of the reasons I chose AWS is because it had a multi-year head start as a cloud provider over everybody. AWS still to this day has the most services and the most tech breadth and depth. And I was signing up for all of that because I wanted to definitely be a part of it. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about my transition plan that I came up with. This was no overnight, 1 minute I got a job that I no longer am happy with, and boom, the next day I'm working as an AWS solution architect. There's some time that elapsed here. I would say roughly about a year kind of elapsed from the time I got that first itch that, you know what, I think there's something better out there for me than where I'm at. About a year transpired. One of the first things I wanted to figure out was, what kind of job do I want to do in the cloud? You know, looking back in hindsight, this is all 2020 vision now, and you can see it clear, but you have to think from the mindset I was in back in 2020. I didn't know a lot about cloud. I'd never worked for AWS. I didn't even know anybody that did. So I had to figure all this stuff out, starting with the cloud roles. So I went to Amazon.jobs and started looking for jobs specifically in AWS. There was all types of different things: account managers, technical account managers, transformation architects, cloud architects, solution architects, and I was getting kind of confused. So I spent a good amount of time there reading the job descriptions, and I ultimately decided that AWS Solutions Architect role sounded not only very exciting, but I felt as though I would have one of the best chances of landing a job at AWS because I felt like my current experience mapped up to that quite well. Now you may be thinking to yourself, because I was super excited, the first thing I was going to do was just start applying to 100 different AWS jobs. But no, you got to remember, I'd already been in the industry for a while and I had developed a certain level of intelligence. Remember, this is dream job level stuff, and you don't want to botch this stuff up because sometimes opportunities seldom knock twice. So I was like, I'm doing this right. So before I went and just started applying for jobs, the first thing I decided to do was, instead of me dusting off my resume, now I'm a fairly intelligent person, but I'm like, you know what? This go round, I am going to hire a professional resume writing service that can take a look at the job role that I'm interested in, the AWS Solution Architecture role, look at my actual resume, which at the time I think was like 4 or 5 pages that had accumulated over the years. By the way, you should not have a resume that's over 2 pages, period. I don't care if you've been working for 30 years, your resume shouldn't exceed 2 pages. So yeah, I hired a professional resume service and went through that process with the technical resume writer back and forth, and my resume was looking nice. I mean, it was looking nice. So I got that buttoned up and I kind of tucked that to the side. The other thing that I elected to do was, I didn't have any AWS certifications. So one of my goals was to get all 3 associate level AWS certifications at the time. Now, you don't have to do this, but because I hadn't worked with AWS a lot in any prior jobs, I was like, you know what, the only way for me to be able to really start understanding what's going on here, I got to start studying for some certifications. So the order I did them in was the Solution Architect Associate was the first one, then I did Developer Associate as the second one, and then the third was a SysOps Associate. Now remember, you got to remember, I'm not playing checkers here, I'm playing chess. So this is all about a long-term process here. Maybe you could try to go for it faster, but I was adopting the measure twice, cut once, because I wanted to make sure when I went, not only did I get the recruiter from AWS to call me back, but when I went through all the interviews, I nailed everything out of the gate. So yeah, I gotten all those 3 associate level certifications. I had my resume all professionally done, and several months had gone by in the time that I had done this. I would say at least 6 to 9 months had probably gone by. And when I had gotten these certifications and my resume was all buttoned up, that's when I said, you know what, let me go and apply to some of these AWS Solution Architect positions. Now, you gotta know that when you're applying for a job at a single company, you don't want to submit 25 applications to the same company from multiple jobs, because when their recruiting comes in and takes a look at that, they're just going to be perplexed and try to ask themselves, okay, what does this person want to be when they grow up? Because they applied 20 to 25 times to different things. So if memory serves me correctly, I don't think I applied for probably around 3 focused positions that were all AWS Solution Architecture titles, and I was really laser focused on getting that role. The other thing I wanted to mention was during this process as well, during that certification prep, I opened up an AWS free tier account, which gives you free tier access to AWS services for the first 12 months. And I opened this up in conjunction with me preparing in this process to get a job as an AWS Solution Architect. So it's great to be studying certifications. It's great to know the theory. It's great to get you some practice exams and be able to read the questions and be able to select the right answers. But also, and I can't stress this enough, it is essential that you build hands-on experience. And at the time, getting that AWS free tier account was a really great option. And even today, it's still a great option. There's some more options here now. One is AWS Skill Builder you can do, but the free tier account is what I used back in the day, and it served me very well. Okay, so after all this hard work, several weeks had gone by after I had gotten that resume all buttoned up and all those 3 associate level certifications, which took multiple months. When I finally applied to those solution architect positions, a few weeks went by, and then finally I noticed in my email, AWS Recruiting reached out. They wanted to set up some initial interviews, and I was like beyond excited. You have no idea. I'm getting goosebumps on my arms now just talking about it. So you'll talk with a recruiting coordinator initially. They'll kind of, ask you a little bit about your background. If everything kind of goes well there, then, at least when I did it, I got set up for an initial phone screen. This was a tech phone screen. So this was a 45-minute technical phone screen that really tests your depth of knowledge in many different areas, technically. So I went through that, passed that. Then the follow-on interview was a cultural fit interview, kind of really focused on the leadership principles in Amazon. That was another 45 minutes. Passed that one, and then I landed the final interview, the Amazon Loop interview, which is an all-day exercise, which is a mixture of technical presentation. Then you go over a workload with a tenured Amazonian at AWS. And they ask you questions back and forth. And then there's a sharp focus on leadership principles, and they focus on asking you star-based questions, situations, tasks, actions, and results that you actually had an impact on and you drove. And I got through all of that, and I waited a couple days or so, and then recruiting reached back out, called me up and said that AWS wanted to extend an offer, and I was beyond excited. You have no idea how amazing that I felt. And naturally, I accepted the job offer, and I have been at AWS for now over 6.5 years, and it's been a wonderful time there. Let me know in the comments if you'd like for me to do a video on more in-depth video on the AWS interview process. It's changed a little bit since I have done it back there in 2015, and it's something that I think would be of value to you. Please check out this video, as I'm sure you'll like this one as well.